In this video we are going to look at animals and colours. So to start off with, we'll learn the names of some common animals in Spanish and of some common colours. In terms of grammar, we're going to look at adjectives, and we'll learn two important things about adjectives in Spanish. First of all, that they agree with the noun that they are describing, and secondly, their position in relation to the noun. So here are the names of some common animals in Spanish. On the left hand side I've got three masculine animals, a dog, a cat and a bird. The Spanish words un perro, a dog, un gato, a cat, and un pájaro, a bird. On the right hand side, three feminine animals, una tortuga, a tortoise, una rata, a rat, and una araña, a spider. The gender of animals in Spanish has nothing very much to do with the sex of an animal, whether it's a male or female animal. Animals just have a gender particular to that animal. So a dog happens to be a masculine animal in Spanish, un perro, and a tortoise just happens to be a feminine animal in Spanish grammatically. As you should now be familiar with by now, the O ending on un perro, un gato, un pájaro is the most common ending of a masculine noun in Spanish, and the A ending on una tortuga, una rata and una araña is the most common ending on a feminine noun. However, as we might expect, there are always exceptions to rules, and not every masculine noun ends in an O, not every feminine noun ends in an A. So here are the names of a couple of common masculine animals that don't end in an O. Un ratón is a mouse in Spanish, and the Spanish word for a fish is un pez. And a female noun that doesn't, a feminine noun that doesn't end in an A is the Spanish word for a snake, una serpiente. Next, we need to just have a quick recap of how we form plurals in Spanish. And as we've already seen, if a noun ends in a vowel, as all the nouns on this slide do, either in O or A, then to make a noun plural we simply add an S. So two dogs, dos perros, dos gatos, dos pájaros, and in the feminine, dos tortugas, dos ratas y dos arañas. One or two particular things to notice about plurals on this slide. I'll deal with the perfectly regular one on the right hand side to start off with. Because serpiente ends in a vowel, just like the ones on the previous slide ending in O or A, to make it plural we simply add an S. Nouns ending in vowels make their plural just by adding an S. So two snakes is dos serpientes. However, nouns which end in a consonant, you may remember, make their plural by adding ES, not just S. But we need to be careful with the plural of mouse and fish in Spanish. If you look at the way we say two mice here, dos ratones, you should be able to see that something has happened beyond just adding the ES. I'm sure you've spotted that the accent on ratón has disappeared in the plural when we added the ES. Something even more unusual happens when we come to look at the plural of fish. Words that end in a Z in Spanish, because that's a consonant, add ES to make their plural. But before we add the ES, we change the Z to a C. So words that end in Z in the singular will end in CES in the plural. There's no difference in pronunciation because both those letters, the Z in the singular, un pez, and the C here in the plural, are still being pronounced th, like in English TH, and therefore we get un pez, dos peces. Now we come to some common colours in Spanish. I put them in 3 columns here for reasons which will become obvious in just a moment. I've also tried to colour code them so that you can tell what the colours are. So we have first of all the Spanish word for white, blanco, and for black, negro, for red, rojo, for yellow, amarillo, and purple, morado. If you hadn't already guessed, the reason they are in one column together is because they are all adjectives that end in O. In the next column we have the Spanish for green, verde, blue, azul, gris, grey, and for brown, marrón. And in the final column, the Spanish word for pink, rosa, and the word for naranja, for orange, which is naranja. I'll just say a brief word about these last two to start off with before we go any further. These words are actually nouns. Una rosa means, as you might guess, a rose, and una naranja means an orange. So they have slightly special rules when they are adjectives, and they never change. They don't change their endings at all. On the next slide and the following slides, we're going to learn how to make adjectives agree, and we'll see that all of these other adjectives do change their endings when they are agreeing with nouns. So now we come to look at agreement of adjectives. I'm just going to explain what this means in technical terms in case you have any doubts about it. An adjective is a word which describes a noun. So on the screen at the moment I can see the Spanish phrases for example, a white cat. Although you will have noticed that in Spanish we have a and then cat and then white. We'll come back to the position of adjectives a little bit later on. One important thing that Spanish does, like many other languages, is that it makes the adjective agree with the noun. What does this mean, agree? Well, we've discovered that nouns in Spanish can be either masculine, un gato, or feminine, una rata. If we have an adjective that describes a particular noun, it must agree with that noun. So if the noun is masculine, un gato, the adjective must be in a masculine form, as the word blanco is here. Similarly, if we have a feminine noun, una rata, the adjective must be in the feminine form, blanca. So that's a general explanation of what agreement of adjectives means. Now we come to look at the most common kind of adjective in Spanish, and that is an adjective whose masculine singular form ends in O. Blanco is just such an adjective. All adjectives that end in an O have 4 separate forms. So I can see on the screen now the words blanco, blanca, blancos and blancas, which are the 4 separate forms of the adjective blanco, white in Spanish. So if I have a masculine singular noun, un gato, the adjective must end in an O, blanco. But if the noun is feminine singular, una rata, I must change the O to an A. So I get una rata blanca, a white rat. If I make a masculine noun such as gato plural, which I've done here by, of course, adding an S, I'm also going to make the un, a, plural by adding os to make it unos, some white cats. So I've got some cats, unos gatos, which we've met before. The adjective now must also agree. So for a plural adjective, the plural form of an adjective ending in O, I add os. So some white cats is unos gatos blancos. And similarly, the plural of una rata blanca becomes unas ratas blancas, because for feminine plural of an adjective ending in O, I add as. So to recap briefly, the four separate forms of an adjective ending in O are words ending in o, a, os or as for masculine singular, feminine singular, masculine plural and feminine plural. Blanco, blanca, blancos, blancas. Now that we've established the general principle of agreement of adjectives, we can move on to look at another common type of adjective in Spanish, and that is an adjective that ends in E. And the example I'm going to use here is the Spanish word green, verde. What we'll immediately notice, if we look down our four examples here, is that rather than having four separate forms like the word blanco, an adjective ending in E has only two separate forms. This means that the masculine singular form is the same as the feminine singular form. So if I want to say a green bird, I say un pájaro verde. But if I want to say a green snake, it's una serpiente verde. Still, the word verde has not changed in its form between the masculine and the feminine. Similarly, un perro verde, which would be rather strange for a green dog, or una tortuga verde, a green tortoise. And when we go into the plural, as we might expect for a word ending in a vowel, in an E, we simply add an S to make it plural. But notice again that as the singular forms are the same in the masculine and the feminine, so the plural forms are also the same in the masculine and the feminine. So what we discover therefore is that adjectives ending in E have only two different forms. Un pájaro verde, a green bird, una serpiente verde, a green snake, unos pájaros verdes, some green birds, and unas serpientes verdes, some green snakes. Very similar to adjectives that end in an E are the group of adjectives that end in a consonant. So here I've got as my examples the colours blue and grey, azul and gris, which of course end in the consonants L and S. The reason I say they're similar to adjectives ending in E is because if we look carefully now, we will see that we have the same forms for the masculine and feminine singular, azul, azul, gris, gris, and again when we're going to the plural, the masculine and feminine forms are the same, azules, azules, grises, grises. So the rule for adjectives ending in a consonant is that they do not have a separate feminine form, azul, azul, but as we would expect of an adjective or of any word in Spanish, that ends with a consonant, you add es rather than just s to make it plural. So that's how we get azules or grises, but that remains the same in the feminine plural. So just to summarize then, we have a blue bird, un pájaro azul, or a grey bird, un pájaro gris. I want to say a blue snake, una serpiente azul. Some blue birds, unos pájaros azules. And some blue snakes, unas serpientes azules. In a previous video, we have already met adjectives of nationality, such as English or Español. At the time, what you may not have realised is that adjectives of nationality which end in a consonant are actually an exception to the normal rule that we have just met. So if you compare an adjective like English or Español with regular adjectives ending in a consonant such as azul or gris, which we saw on the previous slide, we discover that they do something slightly different. Just to recap on the previous slide, we saw that the adjective azul, blue, had only two separate forms. In the singular it was azul in the masculine and exactly the same azul in the feminine. And similarly in the plural it was azules in the masculine and again azules exactly the same in the feminine. But adjectives of nationality which end in a consonant do something different. So we see that an adjective like English, when it goes into the feminine singular, changes to inglesa. It doesn't stay, as we might expect from the pattern of a word like gris, it doesn't stay the same in the masculine and the feminine. Similarly in the plural, as we might expect from a word like grises, it doesn't stay the same in the masculine and the feminine, it changes from ingleses to inglesas. And if we compare Español with azul, again two words that end in L, we would expect Español to have the same form in the masculine and in the feminine. Azul, azul. But it doesn't. It goes from Español to Española. And similarly in the plural we would expect azules, azules, but instead we get españoles, españolas. So we can sum up by saying that the rule for adjectives of nationality which end in a consonant is that they have four separate forms: Ingles, inglesa, ingleses and inglesas. As an extra point and a recap of something we've already met, I'll just remind you that the ones that end with a syllable with an accent on it, such as Inglés, many others ending in S, francés, escocés, irlandés, portugués, danés, there's a huge list of them. All of these adjectives ending in E accent S drop the accent in all the other three forms. And the final thing that we need to learn in this video is the position of adjectives in Spanish. By this I mean, where does the adjective come in relation to the noun? And we can see on the left hand side of the picture here a clear example of how Spanish is different from English. In English, adjectives come before the noun. So if I want to say to describe a noun bird as being blue, then I put the word blue, the adjective, before the noun bird. Spanish, like many other languages such as French, puts the adjective for the most part after the noun. So to say a blue bird, I say un pájaro azul, literally a bird blue. you can see further examples on the right hand side of the screen here. So that the Spanish for a white cat is un gato blanco. A bluebird we've just seen is un pájaro azul. A green tortoise is una tortuga verde. A black rat, una rata negra. A German brother, un hermano alemán. And a Spanish sister, una hermana española.